It's time for On Point with Julian Phillips.
I don't know if many of you are old enough to remember watching those TV shows, Bonanza, Gunsmoke, The Lone Ranger, even going to the movies in later years, Silverado, Wyatt Earp, all those kinds of shows. But growing up, watching some of those shows and where the settlers are going across in their covered wagons, to settle parts of the West, moving out to California, they were attacked by the Indians, and all of a sudden, the cavalry would come to save them. And of course, at that time, actually, I was looking for all the Indians to be killed, not realizing I was killing my own history because I have Indian blood in me. A lot of people, Black people, claim to. For me, it's out on the Long Island's eastern shores, the Shinnecock Indians. But little did I know that a good number of those folks, those soldiers that came to aid the settlers and so on and so forth, were Black soldiers. They were called Buffalo Soldiers. The Buffalo Soldiers consisted of the 9th and 10th Cavalry and other regiments that were commissioned between 1866 and 1867 after the Civil War. And they were needed in the West because they needed protection. The settlers needed protection going out there to control the Indian populations. A number of things that were happening out there. Of course, the Indian Wars, so on and so forth. Well, the Buffalo Soldiers were basically gotten from what they called the U.S. Colored troops. They were a combination of Black soldiers and also Indian soldiers after the Civil War, and they needed them. And a number of other Blacks went in because they were escaping poverty, discrimination, unemployment, all sorts of things, and they wanted a new life for themselves. So thus, you have the 9th and 10th Cavalry and a few regiments thrown in the mix. The name of the Buffalo Soldiers, according to history, is kind of not convoluted, but some say that the Indians named them that because of their nappy hair. Others say it came from the fact that they wore buffalo coats of mane during cold weather. But what everybody can agree upon, that the name the Buffalo Soldiers given to the Black troops by the Indians was a sign of respect. They were very, very, very courageous men. The Indian Wars earned them over 20 medals of honor. Over 20, I think maybe 29 to be exact, I'm not quite sure, through the regular troops and their officers. People don't know this. They were very integral also in the Spanish-American War. They were also fought in the Philippines as well. Some of them defected because they didn't like the way the Philippines were being treated, and some defected over to the other side. But they were very instrumental in what we would call taming the West. They were so good at riding their horses that West Point used a number of the Buffalo Soldiers to train West Point cavalry officers. They said that they were the best of the best. As we move from taming the West and protecting settlers and so on and so forth, the Buffalo Soldier name stayed with Black troops all the way up to World War II, when you had the all-Black combat infantry 92nd Buffalo Infantry Division. They were decommissioned, I guess, like around 1951 after the armed forces were desegregated. But they have a long history of bravery. Not only that, there were two national parks, Yosemite National Park and Sequoia National Park, where they served as rangers, protecting wildlife there, paving roads up into the pathways so people can go through the roads, getting into various areas of the park, remote areas. Now, they served a number of roles. Well, of course, you don't hear about the Buffalo Soldiers and all their exploits. And those are just some of the things. I want you to not just listen to me and what I say, but also Google them and do some of your own research. You can understand their history, and also another group and another person that I want to talk about. It wasn't just the Buffalo Soldiers out in the Southwest. There were explorers. One particularly, his name is James Beckwourth. James Beckwourth was a fur trader, trapper, wrangler, explorer. His nickname was Bloody Arm because he was such a prolific fighter. He also stayed with the Crow Nation for many years and made it up all the way to chief in the Crow Nation, the Crow Indian Nation. James Beckwourth was born a slave. He was mulatto. His father was a slave owner, and his mother was a slave. The father took a liking to him and did give him his freedom. And he moved out, to the West. As I said, he became an explorer, fur trader. Of course, he stayed with the Crow Indians for a while. He's known most famously for creating what was called the Beckwourth Pass. Many of you might know that, might have thought it was something that was created by a white person, but no, it was James Beckwourth. And the Beckwourth Pass was instrumental in creating waves and ways for the settlers to get out to California, and also in areas up into Canada as well. He has a very interesting history because some say he was everything he was. Others say he was, part man, part myth, I guess, part amazing, but also maybe somewhat of a scoundrel. Well, I guess back in those days when you are a mountain man, which he was, and fur trader, trapper, wrangler, fighter, all sorts of things I guess you can probably put behind your name. But he was very instrumental as an explorer in paving the way for a number of settlers going out to the West. The other group I want to mention are the cowboys. Now, you never see many cowboys that are black, but did you know that 1 out of every 4 cowboys in the West were black? Now, how did this happen? Well, especially around in Texas, in the great Southwest, they needed manpower for herding cattle. Cattle was big business back then. And they also needed folks to tame horses and the like, so on and so forth. So they had to employ people. And what they used primarily at the beginning were a lot of slaves. Well, after slavery ended, of course, cattle herding became a big business. And of course, taming the West was also a big business too. A lot of things went on with cowboys back then. But the cowboys, were responsible for a lot of things. And there are some names that you may have heard of. One was Nat Love. Nat Love was a very famous cowboy. He is claimed to drunken saloons with Billy the Kid. Been involved in a lot of gunfights, and also with Indians as well. He also, from what folklore says, also had the name that was given to a number of people, Deadwood Dick. How true that is, I don't know. That requires more research, but apparently he took on that name as well. But there was also another cowboy who was very well known by the name of Bill Pickett. Bill Pickett was credited with inventing what's called bulldogging. And bulldogging is where you ride a horse really hard and run up to a steer and jump on the steer and just pull it down, by its horns to the ground. Well, Bill Pickett was also known as not only grabbing the steer by his horns, but biting his lip. Apparently bulldogs, where the name came from, used to do that. They were trained to bite a steer, jumping up and biting its lip and bringing it down. Well, he says, well, if a bulldog could do that, heck, I can do that too. So Bill Pickett became a part of rodeos, and bulldogging was very, very popular. There's a picture there, the bulldogger. Bulldogging kind of morphed into what in the rodeos is like a steer riding now. I can't think of the exact name, but it was very popular. And there were a number of black cowboys in rodeos back then. Bill was probably one of the more prolific and most famous of the black cowboys in the rodeos. And once again, he was in the rodeo. He's in the Rodeo Hall of Fame. Black cowboys. Don't see him in movies. 1 out of every 4 in the West. Explorers, perhaps not as many, but James Beckwourth was certainly one. The Buffalo Soldiers, my God, from the Great Southwest to the Philippines to Cuba and the Spanish-American War, and then from the Great Southwest and the Spanish-American War and the Philippines all the way up to World War II. What we're witnessing, friends, is in every part of this nation's history, there goes an African American. Every part. This country could not have made it without the contributions of people of color. But we're largely not seen. I was talking to a friend of mine on a radio show the other day. Well, maybe there shouldn't be a Black History Month because, they should be included in regular history. But I said, history transcends the United States. Usually history, throughout world history is always written by the conquerors. So you're not going to hear anything but what the conquerors want you to hear. Thus is the case here in this country. In a utopianistic society, well, of course, we should be included. Will it ever happen? Who knows? But until it does, we need Black history. And again, I mentioned last week, the problem with Black history is what is usually written or what is usually exposed is what is acceptable. And it's just been arts and entertainment and the like, our own struggles that, the average bigot and white supremacist doesn't really care about. But here are things that everybody should know. And I would dare say if they did, our country would be in a much different place and state than it is today. So how was the West really won? Was it won just by white settlers and Davy Crockett and Daniel Boone? No, you had the Buffalo Soldiers, you had Jim Beckwourth, you had Nat Love, you had Bill Pickett, so on and so forth, and untold numbers of others who helped settle the West, who were part of shaping this history, who also had the respect of the American Indians, unlike some other folk. How the West was really won. This is just a dose of a small snippet of our history in the West and settling out there. I would urge you to take these 3 topics, one man and 2 groups, and start Googling more on your own. Start finding out your own, and just don't take it from me about our history. It's there. It's real. It's profound. And it's something that we all, whether we are Black or white, can be proud about. Next week, I'm going to have another snippet of Black history during this Black History Month. Blacks in science and technology. We'll see you next week.